This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. When you visit the doctor, you probably hand over your insurance, your ID, and contact details. It's just one of the many places that has your personal info. And if any of them accidentally expose it, you could be at risk for identity theft. LifeLock monitors millions of data points a second. If you become a victim, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Hello, everybody. This is Tony Ruggiero here. Thanks for tuning in, downloading, and listening to The Tour Coach. We're rolling through another crazy summer right now, another crazy season. There's lots of golf, lots of guys playing, lots of camps, lots of retreats, lots of travel. You know what that means? It means lots of great content coming to you. So thank you, whether you're a golf instructor, like so many folks that reach out and listen to this podcast, or you're an aspiring golfer, somebody just loves learning about the game, loves learning about how to get better. Thanks for taking the time to listen to The Tour Coach, because we've got lots of great content coming for you, okay? And if you like The Tour Coach, you're going to love Pro Work on YouTube. I want to remind all of you, if you haven't seen it, go to Bushnell Golf on YouTube or go to @TheDewSweeper on my YouTube channel and listen to, watch Inside the Ropes, behind the scenes with myself, Colby Touye, Mark Hackett, and a host of others. And you'll see what it's like to be a player of all different abilities, and watch how our team approach goes behind the scenes, inside the ropes, to find out exactly what the magic that your golf swing needs to pick up 10, 15, 20 yards or lower your handicap or get all the way out onto the PGA Tour. It's all there for you on Pro Work, just like it is here on The Tour Coach. So thanks for listening. We've got some great content coming. We've got some great discussions, some great roundtables, and some great guests coming your way this summer and this season here on The Tour Coach. And I couldn't do this Tour Coach without the following sponsors. They've been loyal to me. I'm loyal to them. I think it's one of the missing things in instruction and in our world, people that stick together, and I think that's why we've all had so much success. I've got to thank the folks at Bushnell Golf for their support and their sponsorship of this show, my teaching, as well as the Pro Work series. Vineyard Vines and the folks there, unbelievable. They keep all the dew sweepers looking good, myself as good as you can, and all of the folks at our retreats, and especially Shrixon and Cleveland Golf, Chip Holcomb, Eddie Dry, and all of the folks there. I mean, we couldn't do it without it. It's over 20 years I've been with Shrixon Cleveland Golf. I'm not going anywhere without that. Mason Prang and the folks over there in California take such good care of us. They've got the best product that you can find anywhere. So special thanks to Shrixon Cleveland Golf. And then finally, my good friend Mitch McConnell and the folks at McConnell Automotive, Buick GMC here in Mobile, and Buick GMC for sponsoring the radio and everything that we've been going on for all of these years. So we've got great sponsors, we've got great partners, and we're going to give you great content that's going to help all of you play better, enjoy the game better, or understand how to teach it and communicate it better. Sit back, get yourself a beverage, and enjoy The Tour Coach. And then when you get a chance, go check out Pro Work on my YouTube. You'll be glad you did. I had the privilege of, just a couple weeks ago at the U.S. Open, he had some really nice lodging for him. He was staying with one of my players, out at LA Country Club, was doing some stuff for Sirius XM. He's one of the great teachers in the game. I had the opportunity to spend 30, 40 minutes or so walking inside the ropes with him. I was greatly appreciative of that. It made it easier to navigate. And just a few weeks ago, Brian Manzella and I did one of these tour coaches, and we came up with the Mount Rushmore of golf instruction. And he was one of the first people we put on the Mount Rushmore of golf instruction and golf coaches, Jim McLean. Jim, how you doing, buddy? And thanks as always for taking the time, and appreciate all the insight and the info we got to chat about out at LA. It was a fun 30, 45 minutes for me getting to walk with you.
Well, absolutely. Thank you. It's great to do the podcast, and it was really fun to walk around and watch Ben play and talk to you for several holes. Snuck around pretty good and got to see some great golf, and also to talk about some good ideas in teaching.
Yeah, it was really, for me, like anytime I get the chance to hang out and talk with you, to me, it's just always fun. And we were talking before we came on the air here, we were talking a little bit about how many of these I do. And, way back, the first time I ever talked with you was doing the Dew Sweepers radio back on Sirius XM years back. And to me, the opportunity to meet and to talk to you and other the great teachers each week doing that show was huge for me developing as a teacher, because one, you develop friendships and relationships where you could ask somebody for help or questions, and two, just the access to the information. And, one of the things I'd like to start with is, we touched a little of this walking around, but I feel a little bit nowadays, like you've had such a huge influence on teachers and people coaching the game. Your teaching tree is one of the biggest, if not the biggest and best, with the folks that have come up under you and that are, they're nationally ranked, whether it's by Golf Digest, Golf Magazine. You've had such a huge influence. I was fortunate to come up under a teaching tree where, you kind of learn the process and you learned how to do things. To me, it doesn't seem like there's near as much of that. I think we need more Jim McLean's. I know you're still going strong, but we need more of that, in my opinion. People helping develop teachers, and helping them get their way and being a mentor. I think that's something important that used to happen in golf. And Jim, I'm not quite as sure as if there's as much of it as there used to be.
Well, Tony, when I was in New York as a head professional, I thought it was really important to have meetings with my staff. And then, at a club, you don't have assistants. So maybe not as much incentive to the head professional to do the training, or the director of instruction is pretty busy. It's hard to take the time away. But when I went to Doral in Miami, and we developed a lot of teachers in one area, and then expanded to some other places like PGA West, some other places where we had a lot of 17 teachers at PGA West, going to Doral. The training then, just like you said, for me, having the weekly meetings, which we had our training meetings, 90 minutes every day, was like going to a seminar, which I love going to seminars as a PTA member. And as you mentioned, going to see other teachers. I did that for a long time. And then I was asked to start doing those seminars myself, but I would do them with Manuel De La Torre or Craig Shanklin or Craig Harmon, Dickie Harmon, and we would do a lot of these seminars around the country. But then you learn from people as you do these. Even if you're doing the seminar, you're learning a lot, and you're going to nice places, and you see how people run their operations. And I think my 19 years in New York at private clubs was, a great learning time for me in a very strong section, and then being able to transfer that down into running my own golf schools. The training to me is paramount. Let me just leave it at that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you mentioned the business, you mentioned learn, I think one of the things with mentoring and with the way you brought people up is they didn't just learn to teach. Obviously they've learned to teach. There's so many great teachers, but they learned how to be business people. They learned how to treat people. They learned how to run things. They learned how to structure things nice for clients. And I mean, that to me, and we don't have to go down the road, but that's often overlooked in what it takes to be successful as a instructor and teacher in the business world.
Oh, absolutely. Quite a few of the teachers that work for me are directors of golf at top clubs. And the reason they got those jobs is because they're super knowledgeable about golf, about teaching, but also how to service people and how to be able to run an operation. So we can leave it at that. But it's just a very important thing, of what we've done at golf schools, and that's been a fun thing for me. Those meetings that we do, that I run to a degree, but a lot of times I don't run it. I just sit there and listen to everybody, and we try to be very up on what's the latest, and also to learn about the history of golf and all of the aspects of running a successful business.
No question.
You can't do it. You can't do it without the meetings. You can't do it without the training.
No, and you have to, don't you? I think one thing is everybody's got to be, when you're doing a golf school, everybody's got to be on the same page with information, right? Don't you agree?
Absolutely.
Like, and that's where, I've watched as I've come up, and my mentor, Hank Johnson, was big on that. Like, we all sang from the same songbook, right? And you weren't going to go from one station to another and get information that was, opposite of each other, or it was worse for the student than not going to the school at all.
No, I just did a 2-hour meeting where I actually did the whole meeting, I went through the whole system that we teach.
Mm-hmm.
I call it a code for teaching. There's no code for a swing, but there's a code for running at least this teaching system that I have. The difference that I have, even though we teach positions, I show all my instructors in very much in detail how to break down a golf swing. And if you're going to break down a golf swing, you got to stop the video and understand where the best players in the world are. And it turns out, like a lot of things in life, it's pretty random,
Right.
But I think there are safety zones, and I think as long as my teachers understand where those safety zones are, it gives them a lot of freedom, because I don't teach a one way for everybody teaching concept. I have some things that are get very tight in the 8-step swing, from halfway down to halfway through, being very neutral in that area, having a lot of speed in that area, and the ability to hit the center of the face. But as far as the backswings, there's a very wide areas that I teach my instructors. So I think that's been the most important thing in what I teach my teachers.
So you sent me some notes, which I love, some things to, back and forth to talk about. And so I'm picking some things out here that interest me.
Yeah. Right.
I want to talk a little bit about, I'd like you to expand on throwers and draggers, talk a little bit about that, and then just kind of go a little bit into the golfing machine and dragging, if you don't mind discussing that a little bit, because I think there's, and here's one thing too, I do want, I want to ask you, like, you've been doing research, and I've watched all the stuff on social media, talked to you, obviously Carl Welty, you were doing research before it was popular to do research. I've seen those pictures of you at the Superstation, the old, with the wires on, and, and then kind of, take us through draggers and throwers and, and then all this science stuff that's out there now. How much of it is really new, Jim? Or is this stuff that we've all known for a bunch of years, or that people like you have figured out, and so forth? And maybe, because to me, when you turn on social media and you look at things, it's like everybody comes out with something new. Everybody puts something. It's like they're trying to show they're the first person that's ever thought of it, and they've got something brand new nobody's ever heard of that's going to fix your golf swing. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the draggers and the throwers, but then talk a little bit about your research and really how much of the information that's out there is brand new.
Okay, wow, that's a lot.
I know, I probably loaded you too much there.
Well, it's all great stuff, though, and it's all super interesting things to me. A lot of teachers maybe no credit, or they've heard somebody say something, they don't really know where it came from. That bothers me a little bit, because I think there's been a lot of great teaching in the past that's really discovered a lot of what we think is brand new right now. I think we have better ways of saying things. I think we have better ways of displaying information, of course, with biomechanics and launch monitors and things that the student can see. I think that's a huge step forward. But a lot of these things were discussed, way back.
Right.
I was fortunate. I got taught by a really good player when I was younger. His name was Al Menger, but he worked for Claude Harmon at Wingfoot, and he'd worked for Tommy Armour at Boca Raton, two legendary players. And they were players and teachers. They won majors, but they also taught a lot, which is a pretty interesting combination. And then Al Menger went to Oakland Hills in Detroit. I was in Seattle, Washington, so he went away, and then I was okay. I missed the tour school, and that's when I first went to the golf machine with Ben Doyle.
Okay.
And Ben Doyle brought the golf machine to the world from Homer Kelly's writing in Seattle. Ben was a good player. I played with Ben, and he got me down this road of, the golf machine, and for me, all the golf machine guys for forever taught what they call a dragging method or the hitting method. Hitters and swingers in the golf machine. So, that's where I kind of got the throwers and draggers, because I just felt like it was much more descriptive for the people I taught.
Yeah.
And when I looked at ball strikers, what's been so interesting are the great players who you could say were throwers, guys like Tiger Woods and Greg Norman and Jack Nicklaus, who didn't take divots, would just skim the grass and had a full release when you watched it on video. Very release. But then you could go to the draggers, or the people that hold the face off, have very little face rotation, more body rotation. And you could put Colin Morikawa, Lee Trevino, and Hovland in that group, who are very easy to see different from Nicklaus or Tiger, who are super really let the club go. And then you look at right now with Colin Morikawa being the best iron player on the planet, and compare him to Tiger Woods, who was by far the best iron player of his era, which that wasn't that long ago. And they're doing it, and they got completely different releases. So that's what I'm looking at, and then I see. So sometimes you're teaching people to drag more, create more leg, and sometimes you're getting them to have more throw. So there's sort of a hybrid area in the middle of all this, but you can overdo. I think you can really overdo the dragging.
Yeah.
For me, with the golf machine, with the head being like the centerpiece, a centered turn idea. There's a lot of different things really in what Homer Kelly wrote. There's a lot of things. I'm just talking about what was being taught.
Right.
Out of that book. And so it wasn't great for me really with my golf swing, but it really helped me with my teaching. And the other thing is the idea of position teaching really, was great for me because it really helped my teaching. Ben had the sequence camera. That's the first time I saw that. That was the camera that you pulled the sheet out. You loaded it up, then you pulled the sheet out, and it developed in 1 minute, and it would give 8 frames. And for me, you have a little dial on the side, and you could quickly realize that a lot of people, everybody has maybe a little different timing and tempo, and amateurs who are trying to swing slower are already about 10 times slower than a tour player. So we're trying. They're trying to swing slower. Like I still hear people say that, and that's an interesting thing. But that's when I saw the framing, and working with Carl Welty, we did so much work on. We had 2 TVs up there, and we would draw with a dry erase marker. We kind of kept that secret for a long time. Yeah. As we studied things, and to see, and back then we didn't know there wasn't anything like today. But we studied the tour players that had won 2 majors, and we will look closely. There were 17 of them, and we tried to look closely if they did anything the same. And that's how I really started doing the studies with Carl Welty.
That's fascinating. Let's talk about the 8-step swing, because read through your notes, familiar with it, obviously. I think all teachers, don't you think they all have some preferences? Like if you had a raw canvas, like a 14-year-old that was super talented, or 13-year-old, and you could do whatever you want. You have preferences, and lots of these would be in my preferences. So let's talk a little bit about the 8-step swing, kind of how you got to it, and let's just talk about it, how it can help folks.
Well, I think Setup is something that most teachers would agree on. I think
Yes.
most people, if they look at Tiger Woods' setup, which is kind of like a little model I've kind of used,
Mhm.
would say, yeah, that's a pretty good setup. It would be tough. You could use other players, but most great players set up
Pretty good.
pretty close. Yeah. Yeah. So, that was not an in-swing step. The first move off the golf ball to me was the important, and I got that a lot from Ken Venturi. I played a ton with, and I watched him teach John Cook and Tom Watson and tons of other players. But he was a real big Ben Hogan guy, and Byron Nelson had taught him. So he really worked on the first part of the swing, like the first 3 feet off. So that's the area that I look at a lot, that things are moving away together. And then, halfway back, I think Tony halfway back was probably taught 300 or 400 years ago.
Right.
I think teachers kind of look at a halfway back position to see where the shaft is pointed, the angle of the club face, how far the arms are away from the body, etc. So that was a big spot. And then the next place was when the club got to the 3/4 position, left arm parallel, and then top of the swing, 4. And then we had 2 spots. If I want to say this, I wrote this book with 12 positions when I started, which included the setup. But I tried to sell this book for a long time. And I finally got to Sports Illustrated was interested in doing it. And they said, we'll do 6 steps, 6 positions, because nobody can think of 8 places. It's just too complicated. Nobody wanted, really to do the book until, I started having some more success with writing with Golf Illustrated and Golf Magazine cover pieces.
Right.
And finally I got Random House would do 8 positions. So I did 8. And then that got down to impact was step 6, halfway through step 7, and finish position step 8. I know a lot of times we'll work on people just going to a good finish, and a lot of times just constantly working on person getting to a good finish, getting to a tall, balanced finish off the back toe, fully over to the left side. A lot of times working on that helps their whole swing, and it's pretty amazing, But to me, working on positions, when people know what they're supposed to do after they leave a lesson, I give them drills for whatever area of their swing they need to do. I think that's been huge for me. And you do hear other people somewhat, in the old days, I would say going back a long time ago, that thinking about positions would be a very bad way to teach, that you had to teach the whole swing. You can think of, A to B to C to D to,
Right.
But, I'm not teaching 12 places when I watch somebody and work with somebody. I'm using that as a diagnostic tool.
Right.
Because I know from doing this for 45 years of doing these swing studies, and that where those safety zones are, that there's no perfect backswing, for example. There's things that are important in a backswing, but where that club goes, you could go like from John Rahm to Rory McIlroy to Scotty Scheffler right now, with 3 of the greatest players in the world, and just see an amazing difference in where the left arm is at the swing and where the wrist is.
Right.
And is Jim Rahm a better ball striker than Scotty Scheffler? It's pretty close.
Yeah.
But it's a very big difference from a very short swing, a super bowed wrist, to Scheffler with a very upright swing and a little cup in the left wrist. And I think more teachers are recognizing this. So you can't teach one thing. You have to have a really good idea of what you're trying to do. You can't just be you can't tell a person, this is what I want you to do. You can't just say, just swing through and don't feel anything, which is what a great player says when they hit a great shot.
Yeah, they all say they didn't.
What'd you feel there? Nothing. I didn't feel. It felt great. That you can't teach nothing.
So I want to get your opinion on a couple things here. You touched on them. So like let's start with the backswing. There's people out there that say the backswing doesn't matter. I disagree with that, because to me, from my experience, it almost seems like the better the player, especially as, we're dealing with, say tour players, whatever, like it seems like I do more setup work and backswing work. And then you touched on, getting people to go to the finish. Then when I do golf schools and you have, mid-handicappers, maybe people that aren't as great, aren't as athletic, it seems like with them, oftentimes forward swing stuff like going to the finish helps them better. Am I crazy on that? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think when you focus on from impact through the ball, that changes downswings for them in order to do that. Whether you want them to get the club more out, let's say for a right-hander, more out to the right or more out to the left, then that will change their move down into impact. So that could be important. I don't want anybody to think I don't think the backswing is important, because I focus. Right. I mean, with the X factor that I wrote, I mean that's all about how you create power in the swing, the differential that you create between the hips, the knees, the hips, and the shoulders in the backswing, how the head moves in the backswing. So I'm looking like that, very carefully on how things are sequencing and how they're moving and how the body is loading up on the backswing, and how you use your pivot points and how much movement there is. Those are really important things to me.
No question. And again, you go back to the X factor. I mean, these are all things that are being taught nowadays. I mean, I spend a ton of time, obviously, with, fitness people, helping people learn to load and stable lower bodies and winding into their trail side. I mean, this is all stuff. I mean, like the stuff I'm teaching isn't new. It's stuff you've talked about before, and that's kind of where we started with this is, I don't know that there is a lot of new stuff. And I think that's, again, going back to where I started, why it's important to spend time around and be mentored by people who've got a lot of experience. You can't replace 45 years of experience in one day less than 45,
No. Well, like working with Ventura, he was a big Hogan guy, and then I got really studying Hogan because also Mr. Harmon was a huge Hogan guy, and Mengert was, and so reading carefully, it took me a lot of times to read paragraphs over and over to try and understand what he was saying. But what was resistance? When I wrote the X Factor, one of the things that I saw was, and I spent quite a bit of time with Sam Snead too, but was that the 45-90 was just a nice idea, but I saw a lot of guys, men and women, turning a lot more than 90 degrees of shoulder turn. Right. I got the great chance to. Sorry, this thing's ringing here. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
A great chance to have Michael McTagg, who had a sports motion trainer from San Francisco, after I'd written this thing, and we came out and put that trainer on. Maybe 80 guys at the PGA because they were interested. Peter Jacobson helped me a lot on that with his great personality, bringing a lot of guys over there. We brought it down to the front of the range, and it didn't take long to put this thing on them, and we have them hit a few drivers. And they were very interested in looking at the swing, and I actually had quite a few guys come to me afterwards, after the X Factor, to work on power generation. But yeah, it turns out that this differential, and I think biomechanics is proving this more and more with gears and other biomechanics professors and people in this business, of this differential is very substantial. There's been some guys that want you to, straighten the right leg out. I kind of disagree with that. I definitely don't want to see a person straighten that back leg up and lock it. But the knee always has movement. But I think there is resistance in the lower body going back for the younger players for sure, so they can get a big shoulder turn, a short arm swing, and a resisting lower body that just explodes on the way forward. Where that's where the explosion happens
Right.
going forward, and you increase the X factor, which is the differential between the shoulders and the hips. The shoulders, the hips separate away from the shoulders starting down, which increases the X, and that is one power generator. That's fun to look at.
No, I love that stuff. Fantastic, and people should go back and read the book if they haven't already. One other thing I want to touch on before I ask you a last question is let's talk about the stop and go drill. I love drills. I like to give folks drills. I like them that are more simple than complicated, something that they'll actually maybe do. Talk a little bit about that. Explain how you came up with it and what it's good for, because folks listen to this. We also have a lot of. It's crazy. I didn't know this when we started doing this, but we have tons of young teachers and teachers that listen to this. And, heck, this is something that could help some teachers out there.
Well, in the late 70s, in the 70s, I was playing all the, tournaments in the Met section. And I saw a guy who had a really funky swing. we were out on a range, just a field, and I was watching him, and he knew he had a really funny backswing, and he would take the club up and stop at the top, and then he would look up at his hands and he'd move the club around, and then he would kind of bring the club down, and then he'd go up and he'd do it over again. He did this quite a few times. So it got me thinking, that's a really cool idea to actually go up and just stop and look at it. So I thought, well, maybe I could go up and stop and actually hit a golf ball doing this. So I went back to this was at Westchester Country Club, and I went back there where I was teaching there. And, you could go up to the top and stop and hit the ball. Mm-hmm. And, I kind of experimented a little bit. And then I put that in the first book I wrote was the drills book, the Golf Digest book of drills. And then when I started speaking, I would, talk about that was, all of these things. We even did 5-day schools for the PGA for playing, where we'd have 25 pros come and we'd work with them for 5 straight days. So you had to have a lot of drills to do. And I always loved drills, and this was just one of them. But I showed it to a lot of people. And I used this drill with the guy I used it the most with that had a tremendous amount of success was Peter Jacobson and also Hal Sutton. And Hal really, really liked it a lot after he could do it. It's a funny drill to do because at first, even a good player might top it, might take them 10 or 15 balls until they get going. But I did show it to a lot of teachers, and I think like now I've seen Victor Hovland does that drill a lot. Yep. I saw him doing it at Oklahoma State. My son played at Oklahoma State a little before him, but I would see the pictures of him going up and stopping and then whipping it down. And of course, Matsuyama played that way.
Yeah,
with a complete stop at the top. He's kind of taking that out right now, but and some guys are really slow at the top. So I think I would say this guy, I didn't really invent the drill, but I kind of invented hitting the ball with the drill. And it's been a good one. I've used it with a lot of good players.
Yeah, no, it's great.
A lot of guys, to go up and feel where you are at the top, where's your pressure, how much weight do you have in your back foot, how much weight do you have in the front foot, and then how you start down. So it's really good for people who start too fast with their hips and they get out, or too fast with their shoulders, so they can get a real feel of kind of getting more connected starting down. I would say this is really more for the better players.
Right, for sure. So, all right, I'm going to actually ask a couple more questions. You put in here the truth about randomness. Discuss randomness.
Well, I read a lot of stuff, and it just made me think of golf because, you've got a player everybody's got a different body, the length of their fingers, the strength in their hands, the length of their arms, the strength in their arms, the length of their legs, the width, size of their body, their overall strength. But then you put on top of that, you put a head, and you've got 1 trillion neurons going through everybody's head. Everybody sees a little different, thinks a little different, feels a little different. And I was thinking of that kind of on quantum physics, because in quantum physics, nobody really knows what's going on with the smallest particles, of how things work, and they keep changing a little bit the structure of trying to figure out what is happening with bits and qubits, which are the things that transfer information, like from your phone up to the satellite and back, in two numbers, 0 and 1. And it's just, I don't know. I'm not saying I know anything about anything about physics, really. I like reading about it. It's just so unbelievable that all this information is being transferred on a 0 and a 1. It's just like unreal. But for the golf swing, we've got all of this randomness. All the muscles, 660 muscles in your body, 220 bones, and you've got to coordinate everything coming down. So it's just impossible for me to think that you can teach one way. And a lot of people give the same lesson from morning till night. And that's one thing I've definitely tried not to do. I try to look at every person I work with. And just because somebody can't do something, I don't say, okay, well, you're inhibited, so we're not going to do that. I don't necessarily do that. I feel like, if you work with somebody, maybe they've got some inhibition, something where they need to work with a physical trainer or something. But I think you have to work with the individual.
Don't you feel? I'm glad you brought that up, because this guy, he can't do that. I feel like our job is to coach somebody, and they come to us to get better. And if they need to learn to do something or improve at it, like, to me, I feel like if I just say, oh, this guy's he's just not strong enough, or he can't do it, so I'm going to just lean him over there and let him. I mean, to me, that's like not doing my job. Like, if they come to me, they're paying them and they want to be coached, like our job's to coach and develop them. I mean, who knows that they won't go to the gym and do stuff?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think we need to be able to tell them the movements that are important. I think it's stages. When you're a beginner and infrequent golfer, then there's, I teach them very differently. I'm much more hands and arms, great steady head. Just try to learn to get that lead wrist flat and forward. And then we move into the great majority of players, though, let's say from 5 to 25 handicappers. So, that's a huge range of players. And then we've got to find out, what can make them a better player? How do they hit it longer? How do they hit the center of the face better? How do they improve their swing plane? And everybody has issues, right? With their body. Something isn't perfect, but we still have to work with them to give them the best of our information and give them a better idea of how to swing the golf club better.
Last two questions. Okay. So first, what advice would you give to somebody 14 to 17 years old that really wants to get great at golf? What would you tell them?
Yeah, well, I have this idea of the 25% theory, which is long game, short game, mental game, management game. So I look at that young man and see what part of this game does he need to work on the most. Is it his ball striking? Is it short game? And certainly when you're younger, you've got to spend more time on that short game, because that's a time when you have the ability to imitate and to really make huge changes. And as you get older, that's much, much more difficult to do. And you have to have a great short game to be, a college player, let's say, to be a really good player. But we also need to get out on the golf course for the course management part, and get out and play a lot of golf. Because I see a lot of people have kids we see have really beautiful looking golf swings, but they shoot 77 or 78 on the golf course.
See it all the time.
Not that great a looking swing that are shooting in the 60s. And to me, I try to get the kids out to play a lot, to get out and learn on the golf course. I think there's a lot of teaching now on getting a perfect golf swing. Maybe we're getting a little bit away from that.
Yeah, I think hopefully.
Yeah, and getting them to be mentally stronger too, so they're doing good things to help them with their mental pre-shot routine, all the things that go into before you hit the golf ball, and working on your strength and flexibility, and the things away from the course. So you try to give them an overall game plan. And I think, to me, the idea of giving a plan is something that a game plan.
Wonderful. Last question, a little bit, two parts. What if you were starting out as a teacher, young teacher, what advice would you give to that teacher to be as good as they could be, to have a great career, and to still have, what do you do to still have the energy and the passion that you do after doing it all these years?
Well, you got to find out if you like the teaching. And I think everybody has the idea that they're going to like to teach. You're going to need the energy. You're going to have the interest, the big interest in helping people, and then also working on your own game, developing your own skills so you can demonstrate. I think super important to take you along. I mean, not necessarily. I know there's some people that don't do that, but play in tournaments yourself, develop your own skills, read everything, start your library right away and read different books. Go see teachers. I think a lot of teachers don't actually go take lessons themselves. That was a major thing in my life. I actually I didn't go watch somebody teach. I went and took the lesson, because I think that's a completely thing. When you actually take the lesson, you learn a lot more about a teacher when you take the lesson themselves. You can shadow, I guess. I don't even allow people to do that. I don't do the shadow thing. But if they want to come down and take a lesson from me, that's great. And I do a lesser number for PGA pros and assistants. So those are the things I would recommend.
That's fantastic, Jim. Awesome insight, great stuff. This flew by, and thanks for always letting me bounce stuff off you, and for coming on the show for all the years that you did, and the podcast, and also for the time 2 weeks ago at the U.S. Open. It was a lot of fun for me, and I got a lot out of it, and I always enjoy the time you take to spend with me.
Well, I thank you very much for having me on this podcast, and once again, we had a really fun day out there in Los Angeles, and I wish you all the best. I know you're doing great. It was great catching up with you and learning all the good players, top players you're working with. So keep up the good work, Tony.
All right,
Thank
Jim.
you.
We'll talk soon. Thanks, buddy. I hope you enjoyed this edition of The Tour Coach and this conversation that we brought to you about playing, learning, and teaching the game of golf. We'll be back next week with another edition of The Tour Coach. In between now and next week, make sure you follow us on our social channels. You can always find me at The Dew Sweeper on Instagram, or go to our YouTube page where you'll see a scene and a video from my teachings daily on our YouTube channel. You can find that by looking up Tony Ruggiero and the Dew Sweepers on YouTube. Until then, make sure you follow and check out Everything Tour Coach and all our sponsors: Srixon Cleveland Golf, Bushnell, Vineyard Vines, and Buick GMC. I'll be back next week to help all of us appreciate, learn, and enjoy the game of golf.